sure with your bellies full, you can confidently applaud better and much louder. Thank you so much for such a warm welcome. Thank you, Aditya. We have a lovely panel with us today, and we are absolutely going to discuss about how cloud specifically and technological interventions are transforming this sector for the good. The development in K-12, higher education, and skill-first education is significantly responsible for the development in the education surge. But we are here to discuss also the nuances and the not so good consequences of technological integration. So I open the forum. If we can a little bit talk about what are the current trends and what has changed in past 2 to 3 years, just because with much of technology coming in and edtech coming in play, what has changed for the good?
What has changed for the good? I think it's very clear that if technology wasn't there, uh, we'd have a massive academic gap across the world and in India. And thanks to high quality teaching and learning being brought into our living rooms, children were able to learn. And I think the second very good byproduct that came out of uh, teaching coming into the living rooms was that parents could see firsthand how good or not so good the quality of teaching and learning was. So I think that was the other very, very positive byproduct.
See, I introduce myself quickly. So I run this platform called universitydoing.com. We're into online platform wherein we help Indian international students with their accommodation, right? So I am typically not an educator, so I don't want to be a pseudo educator here, yeah. But because we deal with education, universities, and students all the time, so been seeing lots of observations and lots of trends. So good thing, definitely what has changed for sure. For good, I don't know. For bad, again, subject to debate. But in last 2 years, definitely, things have escalated. The change in technology, especially with respect to education, might have taken probably 5 to 7 years, which have escalated in last 2 years, right? As my co-panel mentioned that there are lots of people have seen the inefficiencies of Indian education and also seen opportunities of Indian education. Yeah. So I believe hybrid is good. If we talk about trend and good things, hybrid good. The fact that you know people realize that they need to focus more on skill than on degrees. I believe that's a very big revolution which happened during this COVID. So yeah.
That's right, and I can completely agree with this. Keeping skill first is now's phenomena. Sunil, if you could tell us more about what's this new venture of CCI Learning, what are you doing in your space? Is it just because edtech's coming in space, but what's more?
So I'll start with a very important thing. I've been a trainer, a professor for a long time, almost a decade I've been a professor. So I'll talk about both the sides. 2019, when we had this thing kicking in, what we realized was that technology, which was an option thing for a lot of things, optional thing, we had an IT department sitting upstairs, we'll call them doing the work for us. Even the ones who were not ready to accept this thing, they had to accept technology at that time. And the students are very happy because when they were getting 75% in the class, now the 75% was out, they were sitting at home, turning off their cameras. I guess parents have seen that, said turning off the camera, and the parents are the ones who are seeing how teacher is teaching, rather than the student is learning. Talking about the CCI part, what we realized was that over the last decade or something, industry had been asking for a lot of staff out there, but the staff was not ready for it. Especially the chefs were not ready for taking up the profile. They were either just coming out of the college who had just done about 25, 30 odd practicals or had just basic skills. And turns out when they joined the industry, there was a lot of opportunity cost we were incurring. So roughly about 10,000 something per week was a chef's cost, which we were actually spending on them. So Chef Kapil Midda, who has been a chef for almost 4 decades, who started the venture almost 2.5, in fact 1.5 decades back, he brought in this program of CCI Learn. CCI group is there for a long time. CCI Learning is something new. And learning actually made sure this time is that we have programs which are imparting skills and making a person who's ready to join the industry, rather than a person who has just done an HM graduation and he wants to join the industry because he has done a graduation program. So that's what the plan has been, and we are just taking it forward.
So good to know that kids would be in the space to do something for real. Atharva, if I can come to you and discuss more about how cloud is helping you in your space and making online education more seamless.
Definitely, there's been a lot of change in the last couple of years. I lead the university office at OP Jindal Global University that sort of takes care of all online and blended learning programs that we offer. And this has definitely been a reaction of the pandemic. Before the pandemic, the university has been in existence for over 12 years now. And we never thought of offering content in an online mode. But it was only after the pandemic and also definitely the national education policy that came out in 2020 that laid a lot of stress on online education and digitization of education. That is how we also got into online learning. Definitely the first reaction, the knee-jerk reaction was moving all our physical classes in an online mode. That was required and necessitated by the pandemic. But then we also moved a step further and we sort of developed online degree programs on leading edtech platforms, one being Coursera, the other being Upgrad. And our first set of online degrees on Coursera were launched in September 2021. And that made Jindal the first Indian university to offer a master's degree program on Coursera. So definitely all of this has been sort of a reaction of the pandemic. If it is good or bad, I mean, I think we are too early in the whole game to say that yet. But definitely the accessibility of education, the affordability of education, and education being accessible to people around the world by just a click of a button, that is definitely prompted by this new shift.
Indeed, I completely agree with you when we talk about technology and specific to cloud. This is something which is blurring boundaries, geographical boundaries and physical boundaries, and democratizing education beyond a level. We are here to discuss more about cloud. In layman's understanding, or even in my understanding, I only can understand cloud as a storage space. But I had a little discussion before this conversation, and I got to know that it has more to do with that. And specifically to education sector. I would love to know what cloud is doing in this space and how is it developing and helping students to make it a more feasible and smoother environment.
Before I answer this question, this event is about technology, and I think all the conversations are about how great technology is. I think it's equally important to talk about some of the risks of technology and the downsides of technology.
That's so important. Other than talking of just sugar-coated advantages, I would love to know what are the other sides.
So 2 weeks ago, I was in London having dinner with somebody who works closely with someone at Facebook who's developing the highest level technologies. While driving here, I was sitting with somebody and I was saying that I'm going to share this today, and I was asked not to, but I'm going to do it anyways. So this person told me that the top people at Facebook in this particular division, they are really scared that AI will lead to human civilization extinction in 20, 30 years from now. Now, juxtaposed with that, we need to really look at technology and be a little careful. And we run schools, we run project-based learning schools. So Vega schools are project-based learning schools. We also realize that it's almost impossible to inspire and motivate human beings online, be it children or adults. I find it almost impossible to build a new relationship or to deepen an existing relationship online. Of course, the metaverse might change that, but we don't know what's going to happen. So while we talk about putting everything in the cloud, which has value, I think it's very important to appreciate some of the things that we can only do face to face. Someone who who only focuses on technology and technology development can create a technology that can damage the world. And And again, when we meet people face to face, going back to our old civilizations where you had gurus, you learned great values from people face to face in physical contact. That's something that's always a risk when technology goes too fast, especially metaverse and things that we are talking about.
And that's so right. I'm sure Saurabh is someone who would like to add on to this point, just because he sincerely believes that there is no replacement to human touch or human warmth. Uh,
Yeah,
what
sure.
would you say?
That's why I grabbed the, mic. Thank you. So, I mean, we all know, we all agree that, balance is the key, right? And excess everything is harmful, right? In fact, in your case, though right now you need to tell whether human touch will be important and all. In fact, if I would be him, I would be narrative that I have a premium product which is not technology, right? Because now, I mean, 5 years back it was like, we have AI, AR, VR. Now it has been, we are human, HR. We are no technology, right? So I mean, I run this platform which is tech-enabled platform, right? So I can't discount the importance of technology, especially when we need to discount, especially when we are catering to international students all across the globe, right? And we build this brand from, based out of Noida, right? Initial 4 or 5 years, we have not even traveled, right? Now, of course, we have offices all across, but coming back to it, technology without human touch will be tough, right? It should not be the case, right? And again, coming back to it, it has to be balanced out. If we only talk about technology and we don't tame it, definitely, there's a risk of employment or unemployment, or probably there's a risk of human assistance, going away. So yeah.
Every stakeholder, not in this particular segment, but in any other domain of businesses and ventures, need to embrace technology in such manner so that we can establish a middle ground where the in-person and technology will sync and can play along. Yeah, what you have to say, Athar?
Sure, absolutely. I think technology, especially since we're talking about education, can never be a replacement for the human touch. It can only augment it at best. Because even when we are offering programs in an online mode or a blended mode, the programs are taught by professors who are humans. So you cannot replace the human element out of education, and that is here to stay. And it is definitely necessary to sort of strike the right balance, like my co-panelists have said, by also bringing in elements of live interaction, elements where students can feel more involved in the education process. So, so there are two different things here. One is the synchronous mode of learning, which was sort of forced onto us after the pandemic, where all our classes moved online. And that did definitely guarantee a face-to-face interaction with the professor, with the teacher. But there is also another side to it, which is asynchronous learning. And asynchronous is where content is available and you can access it at your own sort of convenience. But even in that sort of a setting, it's essential to make sure that the students feel involved, and that can be done only through initiatives like open office hours, which are held by the faculty live, some element of live lectures, and also apart from that, learning that is more hands-on, even in an online mode, and that can be sort of made possible by, so there's this new trend which is coming up, especially in the field of e-learning, and that is gamification. So learning through games, and that is something that was always possible in a physical setting, but there are a number of softwares which are now available, even in an online mode, which can sort of help and augment in doing that. So it can never replace, but we can definitely think through and brainstorm as to how best we can integrate both together.
That's right. Sunil, if you are very persistent on experiential learning, and CCI is CCI learning for that is a focus area. How is technology helping you in establishing this whole space? And what are some of the, frameworks or approaches which are not doing really well?
So I'll just go back to one very important thing, that pandemic has been here. It is still here. It's going to come back again. So we cannot rule out the point that you might have another day coming in when you're stuck in the home for about 2 or 3 months, not able to go out. Keeping the same thing in mind, the experience that I had in the past from the previous university, what we realized was that the student is bound to get demotivated or maybe go into depression also if it's not been taken care of. We had our batch of about 120. 25 people approaching us, they were demotivated. They were actually not happy sitting at home because they had too much of their parents. So I guess people can say they had too much of their parents at that time. They want to be on campus. So CCI is trying to work out a pattern in which the experiential learning will continue. Yes, come to campus, be a part of the session. If you're bored sitting at home, you're going to have online sessions available for you at your own will. That is there. But one thing that we have brought in is the element of the wow factor we have brought in. We have brought in sessions from the experts out there, like the people you see on television, like Chef Vicky Ratnani and all these people taking the sessions for you. That actually pulls you back to the very same university where you don't want to go anymore because NEP says you can miss out certain number of classes. So the student is not only coming in for classes, he's there because he wants to be there. He wants to meet up with those chefs. He can be in that very same kitchen, work around with his own students, with his own batchmates, bring in somebody else from engineering or some other department and maybe file a patent. Just to highlight this thing, we had the highest number of patents in the last 2 years in the education sector compared to any year out there. So that's what we're looking at. We're trying to bring in that same factor to the student back there who has become too clumsy sitting at home for the last 2 or 3 years. Generation Z is somebody who actually has learned a lot in this time, and that is what I normally say they have learned how to be clumsy. I've got my own cousins, I tell them on their face, you have become clumsy. And this is the only way we can bring them back. You have to bring in something motivational for them.
So here comes the, do you wish to add something?
I wanted to add something. You spoke of experiential learning, and I think there are two huge challenges ahead. The first is that someone said to me once that there is more tech and less ed in edtech. And that's probably one of the reasons why most edtech ventures around the world haven't really disrupted mainstream teaching and learning, at least at the school level. Now, the reason is very simple, that in order to deliver high quality teaching and learning, you need to get people to start thinking. Most edtech ventures, online teaching and learning platforms just deliver content, and it's one-way content. So edtech companies need to try to figure out how to create and deliver learning in a way that it becomes really engaging and interesting for students. As my colleague mentioned, that children don't want to sit at home. And if children don't want to sit at home, edtech won't succeed. So that's one very big piece that needs to be addressed. The second piece that needs to be addressed is that we are talking about technology today, where it's a flat screen and that's it. But 5, 10, 15 years from now, maybe even earlier, we will live in the metaverse, where thanks to virtual reality, etc., children and adults will be able to see virtual images of each other, and it might very well feel like the real thing. But then I think the biggest challenge is going to be how to humanize that. Because the big problem with edtech is that the human connections, the human feeling is missing. And the physical feeling is missing. But bringing in the actual physical nuances, then how do you humanize technology? So how do you bring more ed into tech, and how do you humanize tech more? I think these are the two really important questions.
Well quoted, well put. So now, 5 years down the line, we can expect our sports period to take place online. We'll be swimming online, we'll be playing cricket online.
Are we not doing that before also with all the
Neither me.
e-sports or what we used to have, what we have stimulations?
The Wii, etc.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm not a gamer, but don't we have or used to have that
Nintendo Wii.
Nintendo and all? So, and also one thing, because we talk about edtech, and I like the quote and I'll use it.
It's not mine, but I permit you.
At least I give the disclaimer. But see, why we always get too much into like physical class and cloud class. Internet. We talk about blockchain, right? But for blockchain, we need internet. So why we just discard the basic which has been working? So with edtech also, if you see, lots of edtech companies are going back to physical experiential classrooms now, right? So we don't need to just discard the infrastructure which has already been working. So yeah.
So Baiju's,
Exactly,
Unacademy,
exactly.
the latest unicorn, Physics Wala, everybody is coming out with their physical classrooms just
Absolutely.
because online is no replacement to physical classrooms.
In fact, for
Uh,
that matter, I'm sorry, I'm
Go for it.
interrupting. For that matter, any business model, whether it's D2C, they started with online, but now they have their physical stores, whether it's Nykaa, Flipkart, or whatnot. If you see online or D2C is a good way to acquire a user, and then to engage further, you need to have. I mean, we are human beings. We are a social human beings. We need to meet people. That's why we're here.
Amazon is building bookstores after destroying them.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm sure these insights are absolutely coming from the users.
Absolutely.
The way the consumer behavior is changing, and it's adding up to the feedback coming back to the stakeholders and the companies to change their models and approaches. If I can come to Atharva and Sunil just to discuss the question of agility. When we talk about new gen technology and synchronizing it with the legacy universities or institutions, isn't it difficult to, merge both of these? Technology is a given metrics here. But still, what are the complexities?
It is definitely difficult because when we first started out and we decided to offer online degrees, the most pressing challenge that we had was to sort of get faculty on board to actually record lectures for us. Because there was so much hesitation because as teachers, as professors, you're used to active feedback from the students. And when you're recording in a recording studio where there's a camera in front of you and just one camera person who might not be interested in the subject matter that you're teaching, that is not something that the professor is very inclined towards, and which is why we had issues with a number of professors who either were not willing to or had multiple problems when we actually started recording for these classes. Also, the infrastructure in the university needs to undergo a massive transformation because for years, an educational institution which is used to offering classes in a physical mode to sort of reimagine how a class could be in an online setting. Not just the class, but also to reimagine and translate both academic as well as administrative policies, which for a very long time have been geared only towards physical learning. How do we best translate them to suit the online setting? And that is not easy because there are a number of things which, as a university, we cannot imagine so in our programs, more than 25% of the cohort is from outside India. So that becomes even more difficult because designing a policy for someone who is used to the Indian education system and designing something for someone who's used to the European or the American education system and bringing all of it at par at the university level is extremely difficult. And though we are already running 2 cohorts of our online programs on Coursera and 4 cohorts now of our online and blended programs on UpGrad, we are still in the process of developing all those policies. So it's not an overnight transformation, and even when you're offering programs, you learn something new every day and you bring in a change in your systems. So it's a process that is ever changing and definitely a tough process that everyone might not be on board with, and you need that sort of vision to be able to get everyone on board, and which is why I always in the university say this particular department in the university is like either a startup within a university or a university within a university, because it's so new and people are so unaware about this at all levels that it takes a lot of persuasion in order to get things done. So definitely it is a challenge.
With more positive projections, we can say that we are on the right path, but we have just started, but we are on the right path. Sunil, if you can add to this, CCI, the existence of CCI is huge enough to discuss about it, but CCI learning is something new. You have I mean, congratulations on that. You have entered that space. But what's challenging in there? I mean, what challenges do you face when it comes to propose this online setup to the traditional stakeholders? What do you have to say about it?
So to be clear about this part, the platform is not something like an online platform. It's actually a skill-based on-campus platform. But yes, we will ensure if a student goes back to his home or maybe he's not able to attend the campus, he can go online and get assessed on that very same pattern.
This is
Biggest challenge?
something new, but this is
Yes.
something new.
But it's
So
there,
how
it's there
to
out there in other
incorporate,
countries.
how to incorporate this into the traditional frameworks of the education? That's
So just to be a person, how many of you are actually HM graduates here? Anybody who's an HM graduate, hotel management graduate? I think the service people, chefs are here. So they would have realized I'm actually a person with my internship in this very same hotel, Hotel Imperial. This used to be my area, the ballroom, grand ballroom. So what we used to do was come to the place, work for about 12 hours, maybe 14 hours, maybe 18 hours sometimes in a day. And we fill up a logbook, a single page column we'll fill, we'll go back to campus. We'll make a PPT, which is just like available online. It was there at that time also. And you make a thick report. I had a bad handwriting, so nobody could read my writing. So I'll read my thing to the person. He is very happy you made the right report, even though it is not there in that document. What has happened is the hotels over the time have actually actually come into a culture that a person who's actually getting out of the hotel management program will be okay with 12, 14,000, maximum 20,000. So that's the biggest thing that we are facing right now, biggest problem we are facing right now. We have to make the students aware about this part that you can get a better package if you go through our program. And we have to make the hotels also aware about the part that people who are coming out of this program can actually be given a better package. So that is one picture that we are looking at. Second thing, what we actually have been able to do is that we have been able to bring in people who are hardcore chefs. They're not academicians. We have academicians available out there who can come in for about 6 to 8 hour sessions in a week, and that's good enough for us. We want people who are actually chefs, people who have been into industry, worked into F&B service, food and beverage service, who have worked into front office department, like you met downstairs. So they are the ones who are taking the sessions. They make the student aware how you're supposed to talk and how you're supposed to get yourself recorded. One thing in India which is missing right now is video resume. But my colleagues out there who are aware about this part outside the country, video resume matters a lot. So we're trying to work towards that thing. So by the time our first batch is ready for a graduation, these things would have been smoothened out. They'll be in a position of going in front of a customer and talk. And if in that VR thing kicks in, they'll be able to record their own session, maybe make you taste something while being in front of camera, and you've got something like virtual food coming in the mouth in the next 2 or 3 years, hopefully.
I must comment on the optimism all you leaders have. Online and technology play is working absolutely well for higher educations and degree courses or graduation, but it is still a challenge in school years, in the formative years, in the kindergarten if we talk about. Sandeep, you would be the right person to comment on this. How is technology helping kids to, come into play? Also, there has been a mindset shift, just because for kids and children, it has been really taxing and difficult to adapt to the changing natures and environments of learning. Learning patterns are changing, the environment is changing. Could you please touch on this?
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. At Vega schools, we feel we've solved one big problem, two big problems. One is that learning is generally quite boring. And it's boring because it's a one-way instruction where teachers doing all the work. There's an old saying that he or she who does the work does the learning. So we are able to make, through real-world projects and real-world problems, make learning interesting for children. So that's one problem solved. The second big problem that we believe we've solved is that learning has to be relevant and real-world. And we should be able to create the kind of learning that will make children come up with new and better ways of doing things, rather than just learning about what's already been done. We call it depth of knowledge 4. It's the highest level of depth of knowledge. I think it's also important to end with India. We all live in India, and it's very important to talk about the future of India and think, we are a country that today has solved the bandwidth problem, internet bandwidth speed problem. The big problem that we have is that the online learning that we are imparting is, is still very old world, very traditional. And we always believe that one must start with the end in mind. So the end is the assessment or the exam. The problem with technology is today is that it can assess children when there's only one answer to the question. So you ask a question through a screen and the child answers, there's just one right answer and problem solved. But the problem with questions that have only one right answer is that they don't develop real intelligence. So through artificial intelligence, it is possible to craft questions in such a way that don't have one right answer. And if we can do that, if we can create online tests and exams where there's no right answer, then there'll be a lot of pressure on teachers throughout the country to teach differently. So we start with the end in mind and we transform teaching and learning. We transform how teachers deliver the learning. So that's a big challenge for everyone here who's an ed tech expert. Can they use AI to change how assessments are done so that teaching itself gets transformed?
So good to know things are changing for the good. And I mean, you did mention about parental intervention just because of the given technology coming into play and all online classes. If anybody would like to touch upon how culture is changing of teaching and learning both. I mean, this is a very encouraging environment right now we do have in India in education segment, but still, how is the culture changing and what are the positive consequences?
Definitely. So the culture is definitely changing when we talk about online learning and when we talk about people from all around the world being a part of one single program at the same time, which was not possible earlier. Or people used to move abroad and then pursue degrees and adjust to a new surrounding. But today, you're able to sit in the comfort of your home and use channels like, so we at the university use Slack as a channel of communication between students. So you can use Slack and you can talk to your fellow classmates, to your professors who are sitting in different countries around the world. Some of them are fresh graduates, some of them are working professionals, some of them are practicing diplomats, working diplomats, people who are working in the United Nations system. So there's greater amount of exchange of information when it comes to degree programs. And I think that is sort of changing the culture of learning as a whole, where you're not restricted to people of your age group or your demographic background, but you have the opportunity to learn from people who are doing different things and sort of work with them collaboratively.
In fact, so when I interact with the students who are going abroad, because most of our students come to us when they're going abroad, so I tell everyone the same thing. If you're going abroad, you're not going for academics. Indian education system, degree system, very good, right? Well known and all. But when you go abroad, it's mainly the exposure. It's mainly the culture, understanding and culture learning by interacting with other nationalities, right? So again, as I mentioned, online definitely, it's cost effective, it's more accessible, it's more personalized also, but it has to be supplemented or complemented with physical education, because that's where you make human interaction, that's where you make friends, that's where you meet your business partners. So that's how you learn about culture. Otherwise, I don't know what's been cooked in France. I will not be coming to CCI to learn that dish, because I have never heard or never experienced it. So physical and online needs to be integrated quite well, and that's what form culture.
If we can do a quick poll, Atharva, Sunil, Saurabh, and Sandeep, I mean, online, offline, and hybrid. What do you say?
Hybrid, yeah.
Has to be hybrid.
I think it's a very easy answer, hybrid, but it's not as simple as that. I think.
It's always good to have, listen from you what you say, just because it's easier to quote in the headlines. So hybrid is the way forward. And
No, for today, it's offline. The day until until tech has more ed in it, it's offline. The day tech has more ed in it, maybe hybrid.
yeah, we need to work towards that. Yeah.
And until tech is also more realistic.
We are talking too much about education, edtech. It can't happen that we can't talk about books. If I can just throw my final question to you, what is your favorite book or one book you would like to recommend? Atharv?
I'm not sure if, this is a recommendation per se because I am a big fiction person. And my all-time favorite book is The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. It's something that I can go back to always, and it's something that sort of puts me in the experience of
That's
the
amazing. Sunil,
protagonists.
yours?
So, being a chef right from that class 8 of mine, my book is supposed to be Larousse, so which I actually feed on. So that's one. It's a huge book. It's like a Bible we call of our culinary field. So I end up going back to the very same. I'm actually bored or not feeling happy, and that's what I go back to. Fiction, yes, there actually something very useful. The Notebook, that book is there. I enjoy that one. And there are lots more because I have a long route
I'm
travel. so I
exactly
read.
opposite of Atharv. I'm into more realistic stories just because I love to listen to stories, listen to people, and that's the reason I love all the books of Sudha Murthy. So, what do you have in your?
So again, I'm not the avid reader, right? But I've been consuming lots of podcasts. Yeah, and but if I need to name a book, then it has to be start with why, right? Again, the same fact. It talks about a lot of leadership. It talks about what is the factor behind for anything doing anything. So yeah.
That's good. Go for it.
It's hard to pick a favorite book, but a book that really influenced me a lot in the last few months is a book written for children. It's a book called Paper Dolls.
So nice, so nice. This has been a lovely, lively, and insightful conversation. My sincere gratitude to all the panelists. Thank you so much for being a good audience. Thank you.